Previously on Jolly Space Cow. I have something very cool I'd like to showcase. It's a little room that I 3D modeled. I don't want to be stuck only knowing how to 3D model in junky deprecated software. Painstakingly remake my scene in Blender! And I'll be able to make so many more cool creations in Blender in the future. After I converted my 3ds Max scene to Blender, my next challenge was to make an animation. I wanted it to be a little bit more sophisticated than just having the camera flying around. And after researching different animations that other people had made and pondering for a few weeks, I had the idea to animate the greatest story ever told! Not only would it surprise the audience, but it would also be a test of my skills as a Blender noob. The plan. He opens the door and enters the living room, pushing an empty fish tank with all his might. He then looks at the 3 buttons on the remote control for the fish tank. He presses the yellow button, and then a yellow monkey head appears. This is just an excuse to make a satisfying rigid body simulation. He then looks at the other 2 buttons on the remote, which show the options of some water and a lot of water. He wants to fill up the fish tank with water, so he presses the a lot of water button. Flashback, 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 flashback. Last time I did a fluid simulation in Blender, it was difficult for me to set it up. I didn't even get it to satisfyingly splash around the entire room. I will be able to make a satisfying fluid simulation, and this time I will not make it a gross liquid. End of flashback, end of flashback, end of flashback. The door closes suddenly, and the fish tank overflows. The end. Step 1. Actor. So I repurposed the Mr. Finance model I made for my little game that I made in Unreal Engine. I modeled him by making a drawing on Microsoft Paint, importing the drawings into Autodesk Maya, unwrapping the UV, mashing Google images together in Photoshop, and then uploading the model to Adobe Mixamo for automatic rigging of varying degrees of success. Even though Maya is a little easier to use than 3ds Max, Mr. Finance turned out to have a face only a mother could love. Anyway, I would use Mixamo to automatically rig him and then import him into Blender. Step 2. Improving the scene. When I imported Mr. Finance into my Blender scene, the scale of some objects felt off. I had to resize the chair and sofa. I also made the center table smaller but taller. Next, I had a very important task of improving the lighting. I tried a small area light, I tried a large area light, I even tried lighting the room from the window. What ended up working for me was a point light with a high radius. My next task was to make the room larger to accommodate Mr. Finance's dramatic performance. Step 3. Animation. I was watching a program called VFX Artist React, and they were showcasing an animation in Blender that looked like stop motion. They explained how the animator treated the animation like stop motion. They would pose the character on one frame, go to the next frame, and pose again. I thought animating my character like that would give my video a more stylized feel and would make imperfect character animation feel intentional. Anyway, I used a Blender extension to control the model rigged by Mixamo. It was very effective except for the fact it made his legs bend the wrong way, and if they were forcibly bent in the correct direction, the mesh would crunch wrap. After researching for a long time and enduring substantial hair loss, I gave up. I had 4 choices. Use animations from Mixamo's library, let Mr. Finance look like a balloon animal, not animate his legs bending, or make him look like he has emu legs. I was a little disappointed, but I decided not to animate his legs bending. Then I remembered that Mr. Finance is no ordinary man. He is a Bankerman superhero. Surely he has the ability to fly, right? Instead of pushing the fish tank into the room with all his might, he will fly the fish tank into the room with all his might. Step 4. Simulation. Simulations are very fun, but it can be difficult to dial in each setting. I made a cool rigid body simulation for a monkey head falling from the ceiling and hitting the table. I had to make the surfaces bouncy or else the monkey head would just hit the table and do nothing. I also made a fluid simulation that flowed through the whole room. It was very computationally intensive since the fluid required a lot of vertices and storage space to store all those vertices and processing power to render those vertices. Step 5. Rendering. The AI denoiser in Blender that factors in scene information was extremely helpful for rendering all 3,500 frames! What were even more helpful for the rendering were the tens of computers all rendering different frames to a network drive at the same time. If I just used one computer, it would finish rendering all the frames after the death of the universe. So I had all these image files, but I had to concatenate them. QuickTime and Shutter Encoder came in to save the day since they could really easily make an image sequence movie file out of a folder of images. Step 6. Edit. I used two different frame rates in this project, 12 and 60 frames per second. The frame rate is more choppy for the hand animated shots and smoother for the simulation sections. I also tried to add motion blur using Adobe After Effects to make the simulation sections feel even smoother. Okay, and finally, here is the animation fully put together. So there you go, my full animation. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the sound design. I added sound effects synchronized to the elements on screen, but not only that, every sound effect I added, I either recorded myself or made on the synthesizer. I even recorded a video each time I recorded a sound effect. Welcome to the wonderful world of Foley! Can you guess what I recorded for each sound? Some are obvious, but some are crazy that they can make such a similar sound. For instance, when the fish tank lid hits the wall, I recorded myself knocking a desk. But can you guess what I used for the sound of the door at the beginning? That's right, it was a meow of Mr. Grey the cat. And just look at how many different sounds I layered during the water simulation section. This project took me quite a bit of time to finish, so I hope you like it. See you next time!
Bye.